Communicating across cultures is important, not just because of the increased globalization, but also because of the growing domestic workforce that is becoming more and more diverse, both culturally and ethnically. To give more insights on this very important topic, please join me in welcoming Amina Abu-Bakare, who's an expert on multicultural communications. Thank you so much for joining us, Amina. Thanks for your time.
I wouldn't say I'm an expert, but I definitely am getting that way. That's what, after my MBA I went to the Royal Roads to get my certification in executive coaching. And I think my niche is what
cross-cultural
relationships.
But you have traveled extensively. You have rich experience.
Yes.
What does multicultural communication denotes?
It requires you to understand somebody from a different culture.
You put it very simply, but that is very loaded.
It is very loaded. It entails, there are lots of things that you have to consider when you are communicating with somebody from another culture. You have to have an open mind, and you really have to shut down all your biases, and you have to turn off the lens with which you're looking at the world and try to understand. When you're communicating, you need to be very alert, because there's a lot you're going to, it's not just the words you're hearing, but the non-verbal cues that are going to come across. So it's very important. And like you said, the world is becoming I call it a global village.
Yeah,
because we can now go from one continent to another in less than hours. Less than maybe 4 hours, you're in a different continent. So.
And there are challenges, of course.
Yes.
Yeah. Can you elaborate a little bit on, from your experience, meeting people from different cultures, what kind of, there are some general challenges, if you can help us understand those?
Some of the challenges, because we all have our biases, like I've said, and we all have our misconceptions about what other people's culture are. Or we have, we read the news and we just make assumptions that what is in the news is right. So when we meet somebody, if you are carrying that already, it blocks the opportunity for you to really know that person. And so what I would say is, when you meet somebody for the first time, go approach that person and stand in front of them with a clean slate. That's what I say. Have a clean slate, and then start writing what you're hearing
or not hearing.
Yes. And start taking in what you're seeing or not seeing, because in doing that, you are not only helping yourself, you're understanding the other person as well.
So is there a formal education or a training required, or especially in the business sector now, in the offices today, do you think there is an approach that can be followed?
I wouldn't say there is one per se, and I'll tell you why. Every culture is different.
Absolutely.
When you meet somebody from Asia, and you meet somebody from Africa, they're going to be two totally different cultures. Because some of the things we see in people, and I will use, for example, when you're interacting with somebody from Japan or so,
even the greeting is different.
Yes, it is different.
Starts with
respect is different. The facial expression is not there. If you go to Africa, you're talking to somebody, making eye contact, which is the norm here. You're supposed to make eye contact with somebody. If you're looking at somebody, especially an elderly person, and you're communicating with them, it's very disrespectful. So you're going to find them looking down, not because they're telling a lie, which is what they usually say in the Western culture: if you have nothing to hide, why aren't you looking at me?
Oh, okay.
So out of respect for you or the person they're talking to, they lower their gaze. But here we expect to make eye contact for the other person to feel that we're listening to them and to be able to read our expressions.
Yeah. So like we are from two different cultures, right? And we will respond to a situation or an activity or any such social circumstances or even official in a different way.
Yes.
And imagine, imagine a group of diverse group, especially in an office culture.
Yeah.
It becomes very challenging. Any experiences that you have come across, especially with regards to in an office, how do we inculcate, how do we educate ourselves to embrace multiculturalism?
Some of the things I've come across, and one of the reasons I really went into cross-cultural coaching was because we usually misunderstand people. And I'll tell you why. Those of us with an African background, we're very loud. We express ourselves, and when we're angry, you know we're angry.
Okay.
And then when we're happy too, we talk loud. But then I was born in England, and I remember sometimes when maybe the Nigerians come to visit my parents and they're talking and yelling, the neighbors they're fighting, those Africans are fighting it. But we're not really fighting.
It's just happy.
It's just happy. So they can see you yelling 1 minute and you think, oh, these people are so angry. And I guess that's the angry black lady syndrome or black persons. It's true because
Really?
they always say, oh, blacks are very, because we're very loud and that's the culture. But for a Brit, they're very quiet. That's where the stiff of upper British. The expressions are curtailed. We give it to you. And when we're angry, you know we're angry. We tell you and then we move on. But that's the culture, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Right.
So I laugh because I had a friend I met in Thunder Bay who is married to somebody from a different culture, and she went to visit and she said, they were always angry. I said, were they really angry or they were just being loud? She said, then she went on to say, 1 minute they're fighting, the next minute they're hugging and kissing each other. So I said, no.
It's all expressions of love.
It was all expressions of love. And she said, yes, it took her quite a while to understand that. But when she first got married to him, it was, oh, this family, they're so angry. But it's not.
You mentioned about coaching. So we'll take a little short break and we'll be right back, and we'll touch upon the coaching part of multicultural communication.
Okay.
We'll be back. Welcome back, viewers. You're watching Asian Vibes, and my guest today is Amina Abu-Bakare, who's talking to us about multicultural communications. It has many definitions, right? It has many terms as well. Cultural communications, intercultural communication.
Sensitivity.
Cultural sensitivity as well. So you were talking to us about coaching. Can you tell us a little bit more about the coaching part? There is a formal process of coaching you mentioned.
One of the reasons I went into coaching, I chose that niche was I have, like you said, I've been to a lot of maybe 48 different countries.
48?
Yes, and I have lived in 4 different continents.
4 different continents. I'm just repeating because I've never met a worldly person.
Yeah,
yes.
we travel a lot and I love it. And one of the things I do when I go to all these different countries is just watch, see what the people do, how they interact with each other, what they eat, the vibe coming from them. And you'll be surprised just by watching. I watch everything, even the animals, just to see it's a different environment. So I found that, and then having lived in 4 different continents, from my personal experience, knew what somebody else would be. So as a coach, what I do is, because when you go to work, you don't leave your culture behind.
No, you
it
don't.
goes with you.
Yeah, true.
And depending on what part of your culture you're taking to that organization and what the organizational culture is, there's always a clash and a conflict. So what I do as a coach is I try to I partner with you to find out how you can use the strengths you're bringing from your culture to balance what your organization wants. And in doing that, you become more
receptive, perhaps, to the needs of the organization.
something like that. But you blend in.
You blend in as well.
You
yeah.
blend in. You get the best out of the organization, and the organization gets the best out of you. Because what I'm doing is I'm helping you to create your goals for the future while working in that organization. It's becoming very challenging now for organizations to get a right fit with people. And it's getting more difficult for the individuals to be able to sell themselves to organization. And I will use an example. If you have a cultural environment in an organization that is hockey based, like these are hockey fans, and then you're coming from a culture where you've never heard about hockey. Fitting into that environment, you might think it's nothing. But you are not working in isolation anymore. You're working as a member of a team. And if that team environment is hockey, you are going to be the outsider. And invariably it's going to show in the end, because most organizations now work in teams.
Yeah.
And to be a team member, you have to be a team player, you have to be a member. And they have to understand you, and you understand them. And incidences I've had to deal with is I've had somebody who came from an authority/results culture into an organization where it was a learning/caring.
Oh, learning, sharing, and caring, yeah.
And they didn't understand why, after they never missed a day's job, they never came to work late, they helped their team make the amount of money that was required. But at the end of the year, they were told they were not a team player.
Oh my God.
Yes. As soon as they said that, I saw that coming. Because if you're coming from an authority/results culture, you go to work, you do your job, and you go home. What the others do in the offices, you don't interact with them. They're going out to watch a football game, or you are going home.
True.
They don't really know you. Yes, you're doing well, but they don't know you as a person. They don't know your norms. They don't know your values. They don't know what makes you happy. They don't know how many kids you have. To be a team member, these are things you need to share. And in becoming a team player and member, the others will share what they have with you, and they look out for each other. Most times, your teammates won't tell you that, because it's not them. They will only say it in a safe space, and when they have to do the yearly recommendation, that's a safe space where nobody's looking over your shoulder and nobody is going to get upset. So it's anonymous. You don't have to write your name, and they write their feelings. So what I say to people during my coaching, through questions, and I say, okay, how can you turn that around? Or what can you do? Or why do you think it happened? Most times, a lot of people are baffled.
They're baffled about the results or the outcomes of that. The more I hear you, I think of course, it's very important across any organization. But I see a lot of lot of benefits coming to service industries, hotels, hospitals, even academic, and especially in Thunder Bay and across Canada, we're seeing so much more happening in diversity.
Yes, because like I said, now technology is helping people to come across. You can fly across continents now, and because everybody wants a better way to change their way of living, and they're looking for better results. Businesses are looking for opportunities, and technology is making that possible. So you find there are lots of multicultural groups now working in the service industry, and most of them are coming from cultures where caring is very important.
Yeah, absolutely.
So if you have that cultural background, it's very easy to come in.
Yeah.
English is a spoken language worldwide now.
Worldwide, yeah.
So having that cultural caring culture, it's very easy to come into a service industry and do amazingly well.
You talked about hockey, but there are, and that's why I mean, just getting into the informal part of it. But there are some formal variables like time or even the communication medium.
Yes.
I mean, some countries or some continents, we're just happy, you know, go with the flow of the time, and there are some that follows time as if that's an agenda, right? It's like a commodity. You save time and you spend time. That must be a big challenge to overcome for many, to understand that. Yeah.
Some of the variables that affects culture and cultural communications. One of the big one is time.
Time, yeah.
To the Western person, especially Canadians and Brits, to the Western world, time is something that you can
Absolutely.
manage. But to a lot of other cultures, time is something that, I'll do it later. There's no rush.
I mean, I'll take a very little break, and we won't do it later, but we'll do it just after the break. Dear viewers, stay tuned. Welcome back, viewers. You're watching Asian Vibes, and my guest is Amina. And Amina is giving us lots of insight on the variables and the different factors that impact multicultural communication. And before, Amina, we continue on this very important thing that we were talking about, time and communication medium, etc. I really want to thank Shaw TV and my two colleagues here, Pat Quigley and Janice Gummison, who are behind the scene, but they offer us this platform to educate ourselves with these little nuances of cultures and respect and embracing all these differences. I really appreciate my producer Janice, and because they've given me an open freedom and I feel there is a need to educate myself with regards to all these diversity and the people that I meet in my work and in my other social life, and I need to understand those cultures. So we were talking about time and the communication medium.
Time.
Time.
Because this is one of the reasons we have to understand.
Yeah.
And we have to communicate. Because, like I said, time for somebody in the Western world is like they say money. But in some other cultures, I lived in the Gulf for 9 years, and it's always, why are you in a hurry? It can always happen tomorrow. Once they do that.
If tomorrow comes.
Yeah. Well, it will come.
It'll come.
But it's like, what's the big deal? Slow down. Right. And then in some other cultures, it's not a deciding factor on, because I will use this example. A businessman goes to maybe, let's use Lagos, wants to do a business in Nigeria, 4 o'clock, and he's hoping everybody would there. He gets there, there's nobody, and he's upset. What's the big deal? Like, it's African time. They come at 4:30, and the meeting will still go on. But if you know that, you'll be prepared, and then you don't have to get upset. So what time means to me here in Canada does not mean to somebody else in a different culture.
Yeah, it's the same with medium.
Yes.
I know I work with the First Nation communities, and there are more respectable ways to communicate with them. And that I learned with time, with practice, with experience, that it's an open, you have to go with an open mind and just patiently, be patient, and you'll understand wealth of information and knowledge from the First Nation communities.
The First Nation communities have a unique culture, and there are other places around the world that have the same culture. You have to be patient. They have a story to tell, and they will get to the message. So just wait and be patient.
And lots of non-communicating cues and signs as well.
Yes. Yeah. A lot of cross-cultural communication. Most of it is non-verbally. You really have to watch out, because there's some cultures where people are talking to you and they're nodding. It doesn't mean they're in agreement with you. And you can, if you don't ask for feedback, you walk away thinking you've gotten what you want, and you come back the next day, so, oh no, we didn't agree with you. But out of respect, we didn't say anything.
Nodding,
And then some of them would, some of us in the Western world, we want immediate response. But some cultures, they want to go home and think about it. So they will say, okay, I'll give you an answer tomorrow. Okay, why can't you give it to me right now? No, I'll give it to you tomorrow. Because they think about it, and then they come back and present something to you. And sometimes, in some cultures, you're communicating. There's an elderly person in the room. He's necessarily not the boss, but the person you are communicating with is a younger person. He's looking up to the older person to make that decision. So they have to make it after. But you want to respond right now. They're not going to give it to you. And don't push. But in the Western world, we always...
Time is precious.
Yeah. Because that's what
and fast-paced, mechanical, digital life. That but
it's getting to a place now that we really have to start. Our way of life is not always the right way anymore. We have to start looking at other people's way of life, and through communicating with people, we're not only enriching our lives, or we're not only getting to know them, but we're enriching our lives, because we're learning so many things. We are opening up our lens. We're widening our lens through which we see the world. We're learning that there's more to the world than what we know. And so we're not only helping ourselves, we're also helping the person to get to know us. And that's a good thing.
Many times what the cultures that we grew up with is kind of a subconscious, right? It's there. Maybe we don't we're not aware, but it kind of subconsciously we're learning our own cultures, and we're, of course, we become biased to our own cultures. That sometimes poses a challenge, right?
Yeah, our cultures are really our norms, our values, what has been ingrained in us growing up.
Yeah.
They change with time, but we still have that. Some of them still stay with us. Like, a lot of our values might never change, even when we are in a different culture. Religion, we stick to our religion even when we're in a different culture. But like I would say, I used myself as an example when I was taking my advanced cross-cultural in certification. I no longer belong to my tribe. And they looked at me, and I'll tell you why. When my mom was sick when I was taking one of my courses, and I had to go home. In the hospital, everybody was talking, and I stood there, and I was watching. I didn't take part. Before I would jump in, because nobody waits to give you an opportunity. Everybody talks. So I was there watching, and then it hit me. I no longer belong to this tribe. Because now, and one of my sisters said it to me, you are now a white person. And I thought, oh. So
just because you've moved out and traveled?
Well, because I no longer, if I go home now, the way I behave stands out. A lot of times they will say, oh, you're not from here, are you? But I look like you, but they know from the way I'm behaving and talking that I am no longer part of the tribe.
But your culture is with you.
Oh yeah, it is with me. But I've learned also the Canadian culture as well. And that's the thing. I'm a basket of cultures. That's what I call it. I am a basket.
So with regards to communication, there's no right or wrong. There is no positive, negative. It's just embracing the cultures and the vibes that we get from each other, and respecting and understanding that.
You summed it up well. That's a good thing. It's just basically, there's not, I can't say mine is better than yours, because they're too different.
They're just too different, that's it. And just respecting them is that. On that note, dear, on that very positive note, dear viewers, that's a wrap for the show, Asian Vibes.